Hello and welcome back to Everyday Courage. I am David Millstone,
I'm Stephan Dweck.
and we are here today with, we're not old friends, but we're old high school compadres of a
Classmates.
kind.
Oh,
Yeah,
really?
classmates is a word. Prissi Cohen. Prissi Cohen was 1 year ahead of me at a little prep school up in Danbury, Connecticut, which differs a little bit from other prep schools. I'm just going to tell you a little tiny bit. We were cool. The motto over the chapel door at our place was from each according to his abilities to each according to his needs, which is straight out of the Communist Manifesto by Marx and Engels. We're not necessarily communists here, but I'm very proud of that. So hello, Prissy. Welcome.
Thank you. Happy to be
You're
here.
welcome.
And that was a really great school. Taught a lot of wonderful values and I think helped people to have a good moral compass, taught responsibility, some things that I still that have really impacted my life still today.
Yeah, I'm one of those people who's proud of the fact that we don't really have anybody famous other than
John Gotti.
Tracy. What's
Chapman. Tracy Chapman.
Oh, she went
Tracy
to school?
Chapman. Yep, she's our
Okay.
most famous grad. Otherwise, the rest of us we're toiling up in obscurity.
That's right.
So,
All right.
Prissy, you ended up go on to do some work that's really good for the world. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah. I went to nursing school and worked as a nurse for a few years and quickly learned that I did not belong in that field because I'm not good with authority. I question authority a lot. And so I went to work for a medical foundation. And in that role, I helped people who had a medical diagnosis called neurofibromatosis find answers and fight against the system to help their families with this disease process, and then came out to California and started a chapter of that foundation in California. And then I went to work for a prostate cancer foundation and also really was a patient advocate in that role. But it wasn't until my mom was misdiagnosed with cancer in 9. She was told that she didn't have it, but she in fact did. And I traveled to New York with my 9-year-old daughter, and my mom was dying, but I didn't know that, because the doctor had told me she was going to be fine after her surgery. And 8 hours after we were sitting in his office, he looked at me and he said, "If I were you," he said, "I would get hospice because I don't give your mom 3 months." And I said, "What?" Now, this was someone he was a resident when I was a nursing student at Columbia. And I knew him and I brought my mother to him because I thought she would get
Good
love
care.
and care and good care. And I was shocked, first of all, that my mother was dying. And secondly, that anyone would say it in that way. And with my 9-year-old child standing at my side, with me being 3,000 miles away. So for the next month, with my daughter, we stayed at my mother's bedside. I did everything that I could to advocate for her. I couldn't save her life, but I did advocate for her. And she ended up passing away. And I came home from New York and thought, what am I supposed to do with my life now? And I thought, medical advocate. I really don't know where those words came from. I think they were my mother, really. And since then, 2010, I started my business called Pro Patient Advocacy. And I have been a private patient advocate ever since. And it's the best thing that I could ever do with my life. I love it.
Yeah, wonderful. In terms of the framing of this podcast, a couple of questions immediately come up for me. One is thinking about the patients you're advocating for. You see a lot of people who have to dig deep for the courage to meet really extraordinary circumstances that are possibly fatal. What's that been like for you?
Good question.
I'm very courageous in that space. So, for example, I have a client right now who has a glioblastoma, and that is a brain tumor. And she hopefully will be able to do something great for her. And I have been working very hard to find different doctors, different options, and integrative options for her, anything that we can find to prolong her standard of care so that maybe we give it time for something else, some drug, some therapy, something to come down the pike that will be able to really save her life. What's been difficult is that usually people who have glioblastomas have a standard of care, and then the standard of care stops working and the tumor comes back with a vengeance, and then people die. And pretty much everyone knows that who is diagnosed with a glioblastoma. You're not given much hope. So every day I get phone calls from the family saying, she looks like she's doing really well today. Look at her. She's on the treadmill, and here's a video of her on the treadmill. And I go, great, take that win. Today's a great day. Enjoy today. Well, what are we going to do? Don't worry about tomorrow. Just be in today. Let her go outside. Let her put her feet down into the soil. Let her look at this outside. What does she love to do? Take her to do those things, because I have found that finding peace with the unknown is the hardest thing to do. That's the most courageous thing to do. And when you find people who can do that, they really do a lot better with their prognosis.
Well, good. No, I'm going to, wow. How long have you been doing this?
Since 2010. I mean, in my own business, but I really did it with the Neurofibromatosis Foundation and the Prostate Cancer Foundation I worked with as well.
So in your relation with the medical community, what really ticks you off? What just sets you off?
Well, stupidity really bothers me. Stupidity is one thing that really bothers me. I mean, people who are in jobs who don't care to really understand what their jobs are about or know how to answer questions. You've been working there 20 years. Why don't you know? Or people who don't understand urgency. When someone is sick, there's an urgency. You need to move a little bit faster. You know, cancer doesn't wait. I worked for a man who said cancer waits for nothing. And that's true. You need to move. It bothers me that so many doctors are opting out of the insurance system. And I'm not mad at the doctors. I'm mad at the insurance companies, because the doctors are not making what they should. And a lot of people think that they do, but they really don't. So I feel badly about that. David will tell you, I am very angry at Medicare Advantage. Medicare is a fantastic insurance plan when you have a private supplemental. But when you have a Medicare Advantage plan, I always say it's like giving away your Medicare. Because what happens is everyone thinks, they see these commercials, no premiums, no, you'll have no fees, everything's going to be free. Isn't this wonderful? But really, what in the world is great that's free? And so what happens is these older people think they don't know, they don't understand the whole Medicare system, and they buy these Medicare Advantage plans, and they're stuck. And they're really stuck when they get sick. They may be okay, these plans, when you're healthy, but if you have a problem, if you have a stroke, if you have something where, for example, you need to go after the hospital to a skilled nursing facility, you are restricted to the skilled nursing facility or the rehab facility that your insurance contracts with. That may not be the best rehab facility. You also may be restricted to a certain doctor group. And if, God forbid, you have cancer, you don't want to be restricted to a doctor group. You want to go anywhere in the country that has the best doctor who's going to save your life, right? But that doesn't happen when you have a Medicare Advantage plan. And then once you're in that skilled nursing facility, when you have Medicare, you're entitled to 100 days of skilled nursing or rehab days. But when you have a Medicare Advantage plan, immediately when you get into the skilled nursing facility, that case manager from the insurance company is contacting the rehab facility and asking for notes. How long do they need to stay there? What kind of progress is being made? And they're trying to figure out how to get you out as soon as possible. And Medicare pays for the first 21 days. When you have a private supplemental, 21 days through 100 days is picked up by your supplemental. But when you have a Medicare Advantage plan, your Medicare Advantage plan will pay for the first 21 days, but from 22 to 100, if you have to stay in there and you can't go home, you have to pay out of pocket. So is that really free? That's at $170 a day.
Wow.
So I always tell people, when you buy insurance, don't buy insurance for how you feel today. Buy insurance for when you might need it, because that's what insurance is for.
That is something that
good quote.
There are a lot of folks I don't think understand about insurance, and both people who may be on the conservative end of the spectrum might not understand about insurance sometimes, but especially younger people. Not to be political about it, younger people don't see quite this far ahead. You're articulate about courage on the patient side. Mm-hmm. I'm wondering how you would have liked to have heard your mom's doctor speak to you. How could he have helped you, both you and your mom, deal in that moment when clearly he didn't? Yeah, very differently.
Okay. I think it would have been appropriate, at the very least, for him to have taken me into his office with my child and said to me, Prissy, I am so sorry. It turns out that your mom has a very aggressive form of kidney cancer that I did not know was going to be so aggressive. And as it turns out, it's progressing through her body very rapidly. And I know this is devastating for you, and I'm sorry. I wish it could be different. But I think that, one of the things you might want to look at is palliative care and or hospice, and taking a look at your mom's end of life.
So what I'm hearing in that hypothetical response, hopefully not too hypothetical anymore, are two things. One, some actual human tenderness, and two, giving you some options. Actually giving you a sense of empowerment. This is a terrible situation. Here are some options I can suggest.
So the reason I think I am as good an advocate as I am is because I know fear. I know fear. And because I know fear, I so tap into other people's fear very quickly. And when I do, like just before I got on the phone on this podcast, one of my new clients, I'm meeting her after our podcast today at a doctor's appointment, and she's been told that she has emphysema, and she's petrified because she's not a smoker. She's been very healthy, and all of a sudden she's having shortness of breath and needing oxygen. And she was just told by a doctor, you have advanced stage. I don't even know what I can do to help you. That's what a doctor told her.
What?
And so she contacted me and asked for my help, and I'm taking her to an interstitial lung specialist. And when she called me just now, she said, I just want you to know, I'm not taking, and she said it just like this, I'm not taking any more x-rays. I'm not taking a CAT scan today. I'm just going for a consultation, right? And I said, right. And I was getting ready for this podcast, and I got off the phone with her. And then I thought, no, Prissy, you can't do that. And I called her back, and I said, listen, I heard in your phone call that you're feeling scared. Am I right? She said, yes. I said, don't be scared. I said, you've already been told the worst. I don't think that that's what you have. I said, but we're going to come up with a solution. You're going today to get educated. You're not going to have any scans. You're not going to have any x-rays. We're bringing everything with us from the other doctors. I am right by your side. You don't need to worry. I'm not going to let anything happen. And by the way, I said to her, this is your life. You get to make the decision about what you want to do every step of the way. And she said, okay. She goes, I feel better. I can feel that. I feel people's angst.
Prissy, I feel better just sitting on the phone with you here. It's just on this Zoom.
It's almost therapeutic. It's your cadence, your voice.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And that's a gift. It's the modulation, the cadence, the way you speak, your energy, it gives people a confidence that they can get through this. I don't know, you can't teach that. So you have it. So this looks like this could be a calling for you, but it
is, yeah.
You give a sense of peace and say, hey, I'm here for you. That could make you're like a medical equalizer.
So Prissy, what are the roots of fear in your life that make you familiar with it?
Well,
that's why we're here.
Lots of fear.
Yeah.
So I grew up in Danbury, and my mom was always fearful. She was from New York. She had grown up in the Bronx, and she had seen a lot.
That'll do it.
And yeah, and she was always very fearful about if there was I'll tell you everything. If there was a single mom and she had a boyfriend and I was going to be the babysitter, she didn't want me to be in the house because she didn't know who that man was, and she wasn't going to allow me to be in that house. And she was very upfront about that, even when I was 12 years old. So I was already thinking about those kinds of things when I was a little girl. If we were going to play outside, every once in a while, my mother would want to check in to make sure where we were, and we weren't allowed to go too far, and we couldn't go into anybody's house that we didn't know, that she didn't, authorize to go into. So it was that. And then my father passed away when I was 10. And my dad had had his first heart attack at 36. So there had been a lot of health things over the years, although he was a really strong guy. But my mother was always afraid that something bad was going to happen to my father. So there was that fear. And then I used to have terrible nightmares as a kid, always had the same nightmare that Indians like lots of Indians with headdress and bows and arrows would be riding their horses down the backyard where we lived, down the hill, and then would come through our back screen door and they would find me. And just as they found me, I would wake up. But it would be like I was scared all the time and I would run into so I had that fear. I don't know what that was about. And then after my father died was the first time that we ever locked the doors in our house. And I remember my mom and I would be lying in her bed sometimes and she'd say, okay, who's going to go downstairs and lock the door? And I'd say, you. And she said, well, let's shoot for it. Once, twice, three, shoot. And we'd see who got 2 out of 3. And when I would win, when I would lose and I would have to go to lock down the door, my heart would just start pounding and I would go down the stairs. I would lock the door and then I would tear ass up the stairs so that no one would get me as I ran up the stairs.
Yeah, a quick question about that. Running down the stairs and those moments that you lost, did those moments train you to be more fearful, or did you learn a little bit about working through fear in those moments?
It made me more fearful. I was and yet, funny thing about it is, like even, this was a big one, when we would be walking through the streets, and then I'll answer your question. When we were walking through the streets of New York, my mom and I would be late if we'd go to a theater or something, we'd go out to dinner. And my mom would see someone coming towards us who looked suspicious. She would raise her hand and say, John, as if there was someone behind us that was waiting for us. And I would think to myself, oh my gosh, why are you doing that? They're going to know that you're lying and they're going to come and get us. And it was like, she would do things like that. So it wasn't, and most people who know me and who knew me even in high school thought I was the strongest person in the world. Everyone thought that I was strong. All through growing up, everyone thought I was strong. But inside, I wasn't really strong. But I acted as if I was strong.
Is there a possibility that everybody who knew you was right and you were wrong?
Yes.
Good question.
Well, yes, because strength is courage, right? So I have this quote that someone gave me. So maybe you're going to get to this, but my late husband, he passed away 3 years ago, Michael, and the love of my life. And someone gave me this, and I love it, and I keep it in my bedroom. It says, anyone can give up. It's the easiest thing in the world to do. But to hold it together when everyone else would understand if you fell apart, that's true strength.
Oh, wow.
And I find that about myself. I am so strong. I am so much more courageous than I ever knew.
Did you develop that, or you always had it?
I think, my mom, even though she was frightened as a woman, as a person, like she would say, on my father's business, I didn't have any help. I didn't know how to make the right decision, or she didn't know financially, or my mother made it happen. We didn't have a lot of money at all, but my mother figured out a way to get me into private school, to get me into boarding school, to go to summer camp, to have nice clothes, to drive a car, to get into college, and to be able to pay for it. I don't know how she did it because we had no money. And she never told me that we didn't. I never walked around feeling like I was poor. I was with a lot of very wealthy kids and I never felt less than, ever.
That's amazing.
So I give a lot of credit to my mother. I really do. And so for me, I think I watched my mother be a very strong woman. She was a widow at 42 years of age. And I watched her make miracles happen. And so I learned that. I learned how not to. My mother had a phrase, which was, right is might. And I actually put it on her tombstone. And that's not a political thing.
No,
but it's, if you have right on your side, you have all the might in the world. And when I take on a case, especially an insurance appeal case, those are the words I live by to take on that case.
There's also another aspect of being courageous here that I don't think gets enough discussion sometimes. The people who I think are often crushed by fear the worst, the most quickly, are the ones who do not admit to themselves that they are fearful. I fully believe it. I come at this as an artist in part, so as an artist, a lot of courage to me is feeling everything that I feel. Be it good, bad, ugly, or not very complimentary to me. So, I hear when I hear you speak about how fearful you have felt in your life, I hear somebody who has the strength to actually withstand that feeling of being afraid. being afraid itself, the powerful feeling of being afraid, doesn't crush you. You can actually take it in. You don't have to split it off, pretend you don't feel that. Does that make some sense?
A lot of sense, because it just made me think about a conversation I had with a very longtime friend where I was trying to share an emotion with her, and she was totally incapable of going there.
Mm.
And I know that she's unable to go there because it's too frightening for her to go there. And there are some people that I will always come back to the table time and time again to have that conversation until you're able to work it through. But you have to have a willing counterpart, because if people aren't willing to go dig deep, I've always been willing to take a look at myself and say, where am I responsible? How can I be better? How can I grow?
I think there's also a suggestion here about how to look at symptoms of all kinds, and I'm thinking of emotional psychic symptoms at the moment. I remember once saying to my therapist in exasperation, once again, "Oh my God, I am such a hot mess. Can I just stop being a hot mess in life? I'd like to be cool as a cucumber, like my friend Stephan Dweck. Well, I like to be more like an adult in the world. Can't I just be more adult?" His first comment was, "Well, David, you're a hot mess. That's just who you are." Oh, okay. And then some conversation later on, the suggestion from him was, "Well, David, some of what has made you feel crazy in life is actually your sane response to circumstances which are kind of insane. It's the person who insists on holding that poise of sanity, that poise of control, who's actually losing their bloody mind and ends up, committing self-murder, perhaps."
I can tell you a story about in 2013, I had sciatica. And for 15 weeks, I was lying in bed, unable to move, screaming at the top of my lungs. I mean, pretty much all day and all night. And I was taking as much Percocet and Valium as I could possibly take. I didn't care. And I never got addicted, but I was in terrific pain. And doctors all wanted to operate, and I knew that was just not an option for me. And I had researched and found that whether or not I had the surgery, I would get through it in a year. But I knew I couldn't wait a year. But I finally found my way to an acupuncturist. I then found my way to a structural integration person. The structural integration person took me to a therapist. And after the therapist, I had a personal trainer. So in the beginning, it was about my back. But when I got to the acupuncturist, it wasn't so much about my back anymore, because the acupuncturist didn't deal in Western medicine. He dealt in, this is grief.
Oh, wow.
And the first time he treated me, he does, and I still go to him, he does 5 elements of acupuncture, and he would put the needles in and take them right out. And I sobbed on his table for a good 5 minutes. And I said, "Oh, I'm so sorry." I said, I guess I needed to cry. And he said, "Oh, you did." He said, "And there's a lot more where that came from." He said, "I want you to go home and I want you to listen to comedies, and just comedies." And I would cry through the comedies, Billy Crystal comedies. And the rabbi would come. I had a Chabad rabbi that would come to the house, and he would sit with me. And I would say, it was before Rosh Hashanah, which is a holiday in Judaism where you are supposed to be introspective. And I said, there must be a reason that God has done this now. Like, what is the lesson that I'm supposed to be getting out of this? There's got to be something. And then I got it, that I was doing everything in the house. Like, my husband was in the restaurant business, so he had very long hours. So I had a goldfish. I took care of the goldfish. Even when it got sick, I gave it antibiotics. I took care of the dogs. I took care of the taxes. I took care of the bills. I took care of the cleaning of the house. I took care of our daughter's education. I took care of my job. And I literally broke my back. God said to me, "I guess I have to put you in the hospital, in bed, and show you that you're not so important. Other people can be there to help you and can do the job." And my husband rose to the occasion, and my daughter rose to the occasion, and some of my friends rose to the occasion. And I healed, and I all of a sudden learned that I needed to make myself a priority. Somewhere I had to be on that list. So I think that's where my real courage started to develop for me. Also, deciding not to do surgery. That was a very courageous decision for me.
Congrats. I mean, it's
Thank you.
amazing. Prissi, I have 2 questions. Let me just start with the first one. Can you give us a step-by-step outline? Someone who gets sick and they enter this Byzantine world of medical insurance. It's confusing and terrifying. And even if you have well documented insurance, sometimes you get denied for a lot of different reasons. How does somebody, an average person, they get sick, they pull out their medical card, and all of a sudden there's this whole new world they got to deal with? All right, so that their assets are not taken and they don't go bankrupt and that they get good coverage. How does the average person deal with that just coming into the system?
Well, first, choosing insurance correctly to begin with. That's number one. Secondly, understanding when you buy your insurance, like just don't accept the insurance and say, okay, I'm going to buy this. I'm going to buy this insurance because the premium is something I can afford. You need to understand, what is the deductible? What does that mean? How does that get applied? There's a maximum out of pocket. What does that mean? How does that maximum out of pocket relate to any laboratory fees I might have, which is on your explanation of benefits, or radiology expenses you might have, or skilled nursing days, or physical therapy, or any of it. So really understanding your plan. And whoever you buy your insurance from, they can walk you through all of that. And ask the questions, no matter how many times you have to ask the question until the person explains it to you in a way that makes sense to you, keep asking. So that would be the first thing I would say. Then let's say you have your insurance plan and you go to the doctor and they say you need to have XYZ done and your plan denies you. Well, you have to look at something called your evidence of benefit, evidence of benefits, which is the big contract you get with your insurance plan. And you have to read through it to find what it is that your doctor is asking for and why and what they're denying. Why are they saying they are denying it? Are they saying that it's not medically necessary? Are they saying it's because it's not the standard of care and it's not a part of what your contract is? Go back and look. And if they say it's not medically necessary, you have to read that part of the policy to understand how do they determine medically necessary? And you have to fight it. You have to fight that denial using the words in the contract, not on an emotional level, because it's business, it's money. It's hard to explain to an average person how to do the fight themselves. But I can tell you, for example, I had a client who was 24 years old. She had attempted suicide 4 times. She had been never as an inpatient, because they don't like to pay for, like after you have a stroke, you can go to a rehab hospital for physical repair rehab, but they don't give you the same kind of psych rehab that they do for physical rehab. But there's something that's been passed that says, no, you have to give people the psych time too. So she went into this inpatient place in February, and 14 days later, insurance said, you're done, you have to leave. And her parents were fortunate enough to be able to continue paying the $100,000 a month or whatever it was, $50,000 a month that it was. I think it was 50,000. They were fortunate enough to be able to pay, which gave me the time to fight it. And I did fight it, and I was able to get her covered to stay from February until August. But first I had gotten a denial. They had said no. And then I made my way. I found a phone number. I would always find a phone number. I'll start looking online and I'll look for who can I find to talk to? Who's on the board of directors? Who's a person I think has a heart? How am I going to approach them? Somehow I do it. I don't know how to tell you. That's the magic of me a little bit. And I made not friends, but I had a nice relationship and I built the case for why it was wrong for them. And I submitted, I think it was like 30 pages of addendum of research that showed why it was important and why it was medically necessary for her to be an inpatient. Yep. So you have to do it in a legal way, not in an emotional way. So, a lot of families do it emotionally.
Many people are going to need a superhero such as yourself. Yeah. I went through a couple of years ago, mentioned on another episode, a health crisis of my own, gastric lymphoma, stage 1, came out of it just great. But during that whole process, as I'm, getting diagnosed, and then we're looking at treatment plans, and then I'm in the hospital, there's a There was I was on a hospital for a stroke protocol at one point. It was not a stroke. It was a medical error, actually. Anyway, through all of that, I'm racking up hospital time and I'm racking up doctor time and specialized time with specialists. And I'm beginning to get bills. And at one point, I've been admitted to a hospital through the emergency room and they admitted me overnight. I just get in the mail a bill for $45,000.
Mm.
They have my insurance and all that. And I look at that bill and I do a proper little freak out. The anxiety level just goes to do. That was a climax in my anxiety levels, but my anxiety levels kind of kept on ratcheting up and down during this whole process. And how I ended up handling that particular bill was ignoring it. Somebody told me, ignore it. Someone told me in the
The
medical,
worst.
someone told me to ignore it and wait to see what happened. And sure enough, it went away. The bill just entirely went away.
How was
So
that?
It didn't go away. It
How
got
did that?
paid by your insurance
Oh, it did.
because no one, if you have decent insurance, you are never going to have a bill for $45,000 because you likely had a maximum out of pocket of maybe 8,000. Probably the most was 8,000 that you had out of pocket.
mm-hmm.
So you probably paid something.
Yeah, I paid something. Yeah.
So there's a
Not that.
maximum out of pocket, right? But there's a
Yeah.
maximum out of pocket. So what happens is sometimes the hospital will bill the insurance company, but they don't bill for quite a while. They might not bill for quite a while. And so the hospital starts sending you the bills, but they haven't actually settled with the insurance company
Understood.
yet. You have to
Got
wait
it.
until you get something from your insurance company called an explanation of benefit.
Right.
Right.
So what I would say is don't ignore it. Call the hospital, talk to the billing department and say, look, I'm not ignoring this bill, but I have not received anything from the insurance company. Have you billed the insurance company yet? And I really don't want to settle this until the insurance company pays their
Copy that.
share.
Right. That makes total sense.
Good
Now,
point.
I don't want to get out of here without having a chance to talk about where you are in your life right now, after the death of your husband, which I'd like to hear about. We are so sorry for your loss, of
Thank you.
course. You have really been on a journey, as you told me, of rediscovering your own courage since your husband died. Can you tell us about
Yeah. In 2021, my husband was diagnosed with COVID, and he was a healthy guy, no comorbidities. He had been vaccinated, and he just was one of those people. And for 7 months, he was in the intensive care unit. Everything that could go wrong did go wrong. And I advocated for him every single day. And it was nonstop. It was a lot.
Yeah.
And finally, when we knew he could not get a lung transplant and that he wouldn't survive it, he looked at me and he said, honey, I think it's time for me to go on my next journey. I think it's time for me to say goodbye. How do you feel about that? And I said, I understand. I said, it's going to break my heart.
Mm.
I said, but I support you. I support you in doing what you need to do for yourself. And I have to tell you that was the most beautiful passing I have ever witnessed. If it wasn't my husband, I would have thought he made that decision for the next 8 hours. He made phone calls. He had a trach and he was on the ventilator, so he could not talk. But I was the only one who could understand him when he mouthed the words. So we went on the iPad and he called all of his business partners. He called his family. First of all, he called his family and he said, I've decided that it's time for me to move on. I don't see a way out. I'm going to go tomorrow. He said, can you please be here today? I would need you to be here tonight. And he had 6 living siblings left and they all came, and some of his nephews and nieces. And then he called his friends, his childhood friends, our neighbors, and for 8 hours straight, he told everybody what he loved about them. He told them what he missed, what he wished for them, and he said goodbye. And then that night, I figured out a way to crawl in between the wires and everything, and I crawled in with him. And then in the morning, about 6 o'clock, I woke him up and I said, listen, you're going to have a lot of time to sleep. You and I need, there's some things we need to talk about. And so we talked and we loved each other. And then my daughter was sleeping in the room. She woke up and the 3 of us crawled into bed together. And then all of a sudden, I don't know how, it just happened. All of his family just started to come in. And then one of my childhood friends came in, my nephew came in, and he looked around the room. He said to me, he looked at me, he had everybody go around the room and come to him. And he said, give me a proper hug. And he had everyone tell them he told them what he loved about them. And then when it came to me, he said, play our song. So I played our song and we sang it to each other. And then he said, play our wedding song. And I played it. And that was something we used to always sing to each other. And so we sang it to each other. And then he looked around the room and he said, this is exactly what I had hoped for when I called each of you to be here. And then his brother played a song on the guitar that we all sang. And then the clergy sang something like It's a Wonderful World, I think he sang. And then Michael said, I'm ready. And they came in and they gave him a shot of Ativan. And that was it. He was done. And it was perfect. I mean, it was perfect. So since then, well, right after that, it was hell. I mean, yeah, I wasn't expecting that. I mean, who does expect that? And I had my daughter she was a senior in college and she was 3,000 miles away. She was with me, but then she had to go back and finish out her senior year. And I had to sort of keep it together for her. And so she had a car. She was in New York at school and she had a car. And the three of us were going to drive cross country when she was done with school. But now, obviously, it was just going to be me and Tilly. And to know me is to know I have the worst sense of direction known to man. Literally, if I tell you to go left, go right. Okay? That's how bad it is. Mm-hmm. So the most courageous thing I could think of at that moment was to drive cross country together instead of having like a truck take the car across. And I said, Tilly, we're going to drive cross country and we're not going to have a plan. We're just going to wing it. And, I'd like to go northern route. Which route did you want to go? She said southern. I said, well, you're graduating from college, so we go southern. And along the way, we'd be driving and she'd be looking up a hotel for us to stay at, and that's how we did the entire trip home. I think we took almost 2 weeks to go home and we stopped at different places. And that was very courageous for me.
And you also recently did a trip with a girlfriend to Banff.
Yeah, well.
To where?
Yes. And so Banff in Canada. And actually, that's where I think my life just took a major change, because I was really scared. Well, I have to give a plug. Have you ever read the book, Let Them?
Yep.
It's great, right? Let Them by Mel Robbins.
By Mel Robbins, a Dartmouth graduate.
Yes, she is.
I know she is, sure.
It's a great book. It's about let people be who they are, but then let me figure out how I need to be, who I need to be, what I need to do for myself. So that's it. Yeah, it's a fantastic book. Fantastic. So I read it and then I went to Banff. And this friend I went with, we've known each other for many, many years, but we don't hang out a lot together. We've traveled for 3 days once before. So it was going to be a new thing for 9 days. And we went hiking. It was fantastic. And she would go ahead of me. She would just go ahead and she didn't talk. And you can see I'm a talker. I can talk and I wanted to walk with somebody and you know what? Let her go walk and be herself. Let me figure out how to do for me what will make me happy in this space.
Love this.
I'm sorry.
So sorry. Well,
that book helped me tremendously. So I'm glad, particularly I'm in a stressful environment. Let it go. My blood pressure came down, so I'm with you right here.
This is a wonderful place to pause our episode. I'm so sorry that we don't have another hour now.
I got one more question. I can't ask him.
We gotta tap out of here. All right, we'll let you. Yes, go.
I want to know, Prissi. Prissi, where'd you go?
I'm here.
What are your thoughts about this guy in New York, particularly his motivation, who shot the head of that insurance company?
Well, I never think that violence is a good idea.
Right. Okay.
But I'm not even going to say but. I do think it's important for insurance companies to start putting some human people into the claims departments. People who, when I say you have to look at something and do it in a legal way and appeal, but I also present my patient as a human being so that when the claims person's reading it, they can see who this person is as a mother, as a child, as a father, as a sister, so that they know what they did for a living, what their likes are, so that they can maybe relate before they make a determination. So I think that there needs to be a lot of changes, but I think that the one thing I will say to people is don't give up. When you think that you are right and you have right on your side, do not give up fighting the insurance company.
So
Just don't.
what I'm hoping that listeners come away from this episode with a sense that there are ways to find encouragement as they go through these horrible processes, medical in the medical world.
How do people find her though, David? Do you have a website?
I do have a website. It's propatientadvocacy.com, and there are other advocates around the country. I would recommend finding someone who has a medical background. I'm happy to later, if there's some place you want to include it, give some ideas of things you should ask.
We'll drop some information in the show notes.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll do it that way.
You can always call me if you have questions.
So really quick,
I'm always happy to help people.
Lightning quick, because we've run out of time. Like Stephan, we love this because Stephan hates this.
I tried to run out the clock. So
you did. You really did. We're going to try. We do a very quick rose or thorn from the week. It used to be rose and thorn. Now we're doing rose or thorn. Some moment in the week when we either succeeded or failed in a small or large act of courage. I'm going to cheat this week, and I'm not going to use my own. I'm going to reference my wife. My wife, last year has become a screenwriter after a career doing something very, very different. And she's been writing her fanny off. Turns out she's really good at this. And this morning, she was nervous about this last night. She had a meeting with a well-known television star, I cannot tell you who it is, who loves her material and who very well may work with her to make the show. But yeah. But so her act of courage this week was taking that meeting to begin with. There's a larger act of courage in her having done all this writing. Prissi, what about you for yourself?
I had one, I guess, this morning. I had a talk with a doctor and about a patient of mine who's in the hospital, who I need him to make a phone call to the insurance company to get additional days added onto her skilled need benefit. And he was saying he was going to give it to the case managers to do. And I said, no, I don't want it to go to the case managers. And he wanted to get off the phone with me, and I just would not let him get off the phone. And I kept saying, no, you are not going to give it to the case managers. You are going to do it because this is your job. And the case managers can't call the peer-to-peer. You have to do it. And you're just not helping this patient if you don't take care of it. So at first, I can sort of feel that, like anyone would, that sort of intimidation by a doctor. But then I go, no, I know who you are. You're just a person. And you're not doing your job. You're just being lazy right now. And so I pushed. So I was proud of that.
Well done, ma'am. Stephan?
I think the time ran out, David.
Come on, man. Quick. Michelle, squeeze it in.
That's right. I had a client who I've been trying to set up a meeting for with a network streamer for 6 weeks. And I finally got the time from the network and the streamer. And they blew me off, and I had the courage not to say, what the fuck are you doing? I was cool about it, and I'm still going to schedule a meeting.
All right, rock on.
Good job.
Prissi, this was really wonderful. You and I have been trying to see each other, socially for a long time. Yeah, Laguna. It hasn't happened. So it's really fantastic to see you.
Nice to see you too.
You really touched Stephan and I in so many ways in this episode.
Yeah, strong.
This is terrific.
Please know that if anyone ever needs help with insurance, especially Medicare, I will do it for free. It really matters to me that people have good insurance. From the bottom of my heart, it's my pleasure to do it. And, if people have questions, I'm happy to help. And if I can't help them, there are other advocates that I can send them to, and it's my pleasure to do that.
Wonderful. Everybody.
Yeah, medical equalizer. I have to remember that. I'm going to write that down. Thank
Everybody
you for
find your courage.